We have 16 offices globally. It was a complex environment. What we were really looking for was to simplify our connectivity topics and to make sure that we increased usability, make sure that with the pandemic that we were in then and for in a sense we're still in, Hong Kong is still in lockdown, but that people could work from home, from a secure, robust environment that basically delivers the same capabilities as from the office. So that was really our goal before we started to look around and ended up loving the SASE model and looking for vendors in that space. So when I started to do research into what was available in the market, and that's how we found CATO in the end. So inspection, firewalling, optimization, and then obviously from a connectivity point of view, the switch is going into the MPLS network. But with 16 offices, it's kind of hard to keep everything at the same level. Patching is a nightmare with 16 offices, especially if you don't have a dedicated team in-house that is dedicated to these kinds of tasks. So we were always working with third-party vendors and suppliers that needed to do that for us, but it was really difficult to have a clear understanding of, is your patch level at the right space? How is your firewall configured in every office? Are there any holes in there that we're not aware of? And almost overnight with implementing the CATO solution, we had this one overview with all our network rules for all our offices, for all our people working from home. We have a request for a firewall change. It's there, in a matter of minutes if they are available and they really understand what they're doing. So that's a fantastic collaboration. I think whenever you need to make these kinds of decisions, for me, it is really important to understand from a functional perspective what the value is you're trying to deliver to your organization. In the end, our employees, they all have their jobs, and their job is not to fight firewalls and fight intrusion prevention systems and fight connectivity. That solution that you're offering should be it should be a portal into their daily work without all the hassle and hoops they need to go through there. So I think that's the most important advice that I can give.
So that was an evaluation from our customers who have been using CATO. In this video today, I would like to briefly show you how to manage CATO via CATO management application. However, the purpose of this video is to present the architecture of CATO Cloud and see how it works internally rather than just doing the demo. At the same time, the main purpose of this video is to tell you how easy and intuitive it is to manage CATO and understand how benefitable it is in comparison to other SASE vendors. Many of those among CATO customers said that our business pattern changed and the quality of life is improved. Furthermore, since we can provide immediate support to our business, we could reduce any collision with our businesses. Please have some doubt in your eyes to see if what our customers have been saying is true and how much improvement has been made. Before I move on to the demo, I would like to say one more thing. If you say that our service has an easily manageable IT infrastructure and provides support to some urgent business demands, some of you might say something like our company outsourced management through managed service provider, so we can just ask them to do so. However, if you can acquire full visibility on your own IT infrastructure, if you can have IT infrastructure that is easily manageable, you can just let the managed service company to do all the complex operations from the underlay of the specific IT infrastructure. This way, you can get support in a way you desire on your IT infrastructure based on admin management. This is called a self-managed service, which is an ideal combination of DIY and managed service. CATO Cloud, which I'm going to give some explanations about it, is a platform that provides such a self-managed service. Again, I have previously mentioned that it is now possible to improve the quality of your life through easy rule manipulation, and you can get quick support on your business demand. This means that this self-managed service, a new IT infrastructure, can now help you to avoid all kinds of stress coming from collisions among everyone related to this situation. What you see here is CATO's CMA. This processes all the traffic through a single pass engine, which has all the network and security capabilities converged all together, and it stores and manages all kinds of data like rules and logs in a single data lake. CATO's CMA is a perfect single plane management UI based on these processes and databases. Here you can obtain full visibility on global network and security, and you can also do all kinds of settings and analysis. CATO SASE does not have any other separate interfaces for its various capabilities. If a SASE vendor uses more than a single management application, that SASE is not a perfectly converged one. It is rather pretending to be a SASE based on multiple point solutions. You will understand how I can be so conclusive on this topic if you watch the entire video. If something minor undetected in POC that causes inconvenience appears on an actual infrastructure, it will be a major limitation and a problem to the system. It is not like a case where we do 10 things when 10 things are requested. It is already a well-known fact that performing a task with having multiple thoughts in his head is way more complicated than performing a task with a single thought. This causes human error. However, all the sites connected here have been implemented in the same way as real-world enterprises, and they are working well. If you take a look, you can see that there are 4 cloud data centers and Hogwarts School, which is the head office, 3 branch offices, and the remote users. The green circle in the middle is CATO Cloud, which shows all POPs of CATO distributed across the world. All POPs provided all the capabilities of SASE independently, and these POPs are connected in a full mesh form via their own global backbone. These twin POPs are implementing a self-healing architecture that allows other neighboring POPs to automatically provide identical service no matter which POP experiences problem. In short, even if the data center of the POP that you're connected with collapses due to some natural disasters, the customer's connection is automatically reconnected to another POP that is providing services with no trouble, resulting in the customer's service not being affected. All sites and remote users connected to CATO Cloud can be equally benefited from reliable network services and advanced security services via its own global backbone. CATO's advantage is that it solved the tremendous MPLS line cost and long deployment period for connecting sites right away. However, CATO's unique advantage may be that it employs its own global backbone to enhance the optimal connection performance, regardless of the location where you're trying to connect from. In particular, today's remote users must be able to do the same task at home as in their real offices, and network performances has a direct impact on remote workers' productivity, which makes itself a really critical issue for the enterprise. In fact, many employees from companies in China, Vietnam, Middle East, Africa, and others are experiencing disruptions due to unstable internet connections. CATO has built an infrastructure for CATO Cloud through its experiences and researches in areas where these problems occur. It means that it is possible to completely solve the problems that your company had for a long time. You really don't have to worry that you just invest in upgrading your existing VPN. Migrating right away to CATO might be more economical, considering that you can reduce future licensing cost, recurring cost, and operational burdens. You can see that Gringotts is connected to the cloud data centers in AWS London via CATO Virtual Socket. This is a virtual appliance of CATO Socket that is capable of connecting to a CATO cloud running in the cloud. Here you can find some differentiated advantages of CATO as well. If you take a look, the RTT value between AWS London and CATO Cloud is 2 milliseconds. You can see that the performance is as good as if it were in the LAN segment. CATO's POPs are either located in the same data center, where major cloud providers and key SaaS providers are located, or they're using an exchange point from the same wire service provider to configure a strong peering. Users automatically connect to the nearest POP among densely distributed CATO POPs all around the world. Key cloud resources and SaaS are peering as LAN to LAN to connect to the last mile, and connected via its own global backbone among CATO POPs for the middle mile. CATOS is designed to provide stable network performance across the last mile and the middle mile. CATO Cloud infrastructure is like connecting the entire section between each user and a data center using a private line. So now we will look at the physical site named Hogwarts. If you look here, you can see that a redundant configuration is done with 2 CATO sockets. This device is a physical appliance installed on a physical site that automatically connects to CATO Cloud. Of course, you can connect without a CATO socket, whether it is a physical site or a cloud data center. You can also reliably connect to the CATO Cloud via an IPsec tunnel, just like the site named Malfoy Manor here. If you ask me which connection method is better, I would like to tell you to use a socket that uses zero-touch provisioning. When I actually deploy it, I just pull the socket out of the box, plug the power in, plug the communication cable in, and it's all done. Deployment is done. As soon as the socket is deployed, it automatically finds and connects to one of the CATO POPs with the highest connectivity performance. If you have some other settings to do, you can do it slowly on CMA. You can establish security and network infrastructure through a CATO delivered socket with no investment and delivery of a firewall, no UTM equipment, and no VPN equipment on your site. On the other hand, if you already have a firewall or UTM equipment on your site, it is also true that you can connect to the site through IPsec in a few minutes. In fact, at the first glance, you may see IPsec as an easier way to go through. However, when I was doing the deployment, there were numerous troublesome tasks, such as having to meet the collaboration and work schedule, discussing the parameters and settings on both sides, and worrying about the routing after establishing the IPsec connection. In conclusion, you know the situation of your site better, so you can decide whether to use a socket, IPsec, or whatever you want. I personally recommend you to use a socket simply because not having tons of equipment on the site can reduce investment costs and operating burdens, so there is definitely an advantage in the long term. Finally, a remote user can connect to CATO POP by installing CATO VPN client or in a clientless manner. If you look at the users here, you can see which ISP they're using and where they're coming from. This user is now accessing from Montana area of the United States. If you look at the map, Montana is close to Portland, Seattle, and Denver. CATO VPN client performs a DNS query to find POP, and CATO Cloud responds with the IP addresses of about 10 candidate POPs around the given location based on the user's GeoIP. CATO VPN client then automatically measures the RTT value, selects a POP with the lowest RTT value, and connects to it. If you look at here, this user is accessing CATO's Portland POP. If the remote user moves to another area, depending on this ISP situation used by the remote user, RTT value may change, so it may be automatically changed to Seattle or Denver. Now we are done with explaining the connection, so we will move on to the network service of CATO SASE. From now, I will mainly show you how easy it is to set up networking for connected sites. If this socket has been deployed, as I explained earlier, you will be connected to CATO Cloud and waiting for it to be registered as a site. I will move on to CMA and register the awaiting socket and start working as an official site. If you click New, you will see Add Site. Enter the name of the site here and select the connection type. Choose one out of two options for CATO socket. This socket is primarily used for small sites and supports up to 500 megabytes per second. And this socket is primarily used for medium to large sites and supports up to 3 gigabytes per second. You may have noticed that CATO socket has different advantages than other SASE vendors. Most SASE vendors use traditional SD-WAN equipment, which inherits an architecture that performs complex capabilities and use high-level equipment. And because the SASE designs are performed by SD-WAN equipment for many of the capabilities, it requires upgrades from time to time. Therefore, it is a factor that dramatically reduces the stability of the site's connectivity equipment. In contrast, CATO is a cloud-native SASE since birth. Everything is processed in CATO Cloud, and the sockets deployed on the site are focused on connecting well with CATO Cloud and remote monitoring. It is quite simple, and zero-touch provisioning works well. This simple capability also allows CATO socket to be used continuously without any other special changes. Ensuring a sufficient amount is provided, once you have signed up for a CATO SASE service, it will be shipped by DHL the next day and will be delivered to your doorstep within 2 to 3 days by CATO to processing customs clearance. And if you look here, there is a virtual socket that you can just download from the CMA without even having a physical delivery. It provides virtual sockets by default for the sites in ESX, AWS, and Azure. And of course, if our customers request, we can connect to their IPsec tunnel of Cloud VPN or VPN appliance. As you can see right there, CATO's IPsec can support both IKEV version 1 and IKE version 2. Now I will try to connect to the physical site. We have already delivered and deployed X1500 in this site. I will select this as the connection type. Then specify the country where the site belongs to. Time zone will be set automatically accordingly. Then you want to set the bandwidth allocated to the WAN interface for upstream and downstream bandwidth between CATO socket and POP. Setting bandwidth here is quite meaningful for the customers using CATO SASE. CATO's network service has its own global backbone. Therefore, the customer needs to set the bandwidth when subscribing to CATO SASE service. For example, if a site uses a bandwidth of 1 GB per second for the internet, a SASE vendor who says that they can provide such amount for free neither has their own global backbone nor has a good performance. It is impossible to deliver an expensive SLA-based global backbone at a low cost as low as the ones offered by local IP access connecting to the customer's site. On the other hand, CATO SASE allows you to set subscription cost for the site's bandwidth. If your site is physically using an internet connection of 1 GB per second, and if you apply for 100 megabytes per second bandwidth service, CATO provides an SLA that allows you to use a global backbone for that 100 megabytes per second of bandwidth. It is definitely a more competitive price than MPLS, but it's not the same price as the public internet. A customer can possibly make a mistake of setting this bandwidth as 1 GB per second. However, this can distort the effective settings of bandwidth management, which we will be discussing shortly, but it is recommended to make sure it is accurate. Of course, even in this case, bandwidth management is distorted, but there is no service problem. When you're done with setting things up, click the alarm in CMA, and activating the deployed socket in that certain site is the last step. Then you can see that the new site is finally connected to the CMA screen and the service is started. Let's move on to the bandwidth management. CATO can pre-create up to 252 bandwidth queues specifically, and the lower the number, the higher the priority. These created bandwidth queues can be set up by viewing the traffic usage trends of sites all around the world via CMA, which makes it easy and accurate to set up. As you can see here, create as many queues as you want, assign a priority for each queue, assign which applications to have it applied, set the condition for it, and you're done. In my experience, a customer who uses CATO do not squeeze it to the end because the bandwidth cost is not as high as that of MPLS they used before. Customer is not minimizing the bandwidth to reduce the high cost of MPLS. customer is not burdening network performance by not investing in additional traffic compression devices. In conclusion, you can surely create 252 bandwidth queues, but for the most of the cases, you will only use a few of the queues for essential voice or some major task-related traffic. Therefore, you can assume that there is little to no operational burden. If you look at CATO's customers, most of the large global companies use them at a maximum of 10. I will now move on to the network rule. Right here, it no longer needs to have all kinds of complex routing settings for global networks done by traditional IT departments. The creation of the site that is shown earlier allows all routing to be created automatically and reliably operated through CATO's SD-WAN and BGP routing capabilities. When a new site is created, a path is created internally in CATO Cloud, and traffic is sent, and the entire process is automatically completed in 1 to 3 minutes. After all, how do you connect sites like a legacy network and set up routing on multiple routers? Do not worry about that. Since CATO Cloud is a software-defined network, simply setting all specifics of the site and connecting it will automatically create a path to access, which you can immediately use it. If you would like to understand how software-defined network works internally, think about the BGP routing protocol. This means that the locations of networks are accurately recognized by the simplified internal logic of CATO Cloud. This is it for network connections. Next, I will now show you how to specify the way how a user can go through which path with which way to which application interactively. As you can see here, you can intuitively recognize that the shape of the cloud is the network rule for the internet segment, and the shape of the globe is the network rule for the WAN connection. Again, CATO SASE has a powerful advantage that is completely different from other SASEs. Let's take a look at what kinds of rules can be applied to well-known Salesforce at fourth network rule here to find out CATO SASE's powerful advantage. Of course, the type is the internet in the shape of cloud. Source is any, meaning it applies to all users and sites, and the application is Salesforce, which the company is using as a critical CRM. The destination of the traffic is the internet direction. Bandwidth management has assigned P14, which has the second highest priority after interactive application. The next slot is routing, and you can see the advantages that CATO has that are completely different from other SASEs. To interpret what it is saying, the routing method is a route via, a network rule that allows traffic to be exported after going to the POP designated as an egress point through the global backbone instead of going to the internet directly. Right here, egress point specifies the Frankfurt POP of CATO. If you belong to the IT departments of companies that use Salesforce, you may know that there are only 9 physical data centers where Salesforce can store their instances. Because most of the Korean companies' Salesforce instances use physical data centers in Japan, they are directly affected by the disruption or performance degradation in the internet connection between Korea and Japan. You might have experienced slowness or failures from time to time. There are 2 data centers used by EU nations, Frankfurt in Germany and Paris in France. Here, companies have their own instances in Frankfurt's Salesforce data center, so employees around the world must go through distant internet segments and connect. Because this sample company was built on the assumption that it was headquartered in the European Union, the network rules set here are for reliable Salesforce connectivity. Instead of sending traffic directly from CATO POP where the user is accessing to the internet segment, traffic is sent to the Frankfurt POP through CATO's backbone, and then designate that POP as an egress point, sending it to Salesforce Frankfurt Data Center where they have customers' instances. As a result, user can now obtain reliable network connectivity from the user to Salesforce Frankfurt Data Center like he has his own private line. If you have already tried some expensive cloud network connectivity services like Aviatrix, Azure's ExpressRoute, AWS Direct Connect, and more, you can see how valuable and good it is. Yes, that's right. It is the most fundamental cloud application performance enhancement for cloud optimization. You no longer must use separate cloud network connectivity services because of Salesforce's slow performance. You do not even need to copy the instances to the data center in a location where the user is at a high cost. Without having to worry about the complex, expensive cost of cloud optimization, those companies using CATO can simply set up a network rule written in a single line to obtain reliable performance as stable as connecting the user and Salesforce's data center directly with MPLS line. I cannot forget the excitement I had when I first saw this feature 2 years ago. That is because every single big company I was meeting with was struggling with performance management for cloud applications, and I spent years finding and testing all kinds of solutions to solve this issue, considering using the vendor suggested, which demands pretty much high costs. It was quite an amazement to find out that this old and complex problem is able to be solved in a simple setting. I went straight to the customer and said, "There's a service that can solve you what you've been worrying about." What happened then? As you may be surprised, the customer did not believe it. They said that many of their employees have been working on this cloud optimization problem for a long time, and many service companies made some progress slowly, and some customers even bragged to me that they are the best in South Korea. They said they cannot believe that the Israeli vendor can solve such a difficult task quite easily. At least they refused to believe it back then. However, some of the global companies I actually consulted and supplied CATO SASE have signed up for hundreds of megabytes of bandwidth just for the purpose of connecting remote users to the cloud data center, and they are now expanding their services to other segments due to CATO's satisfactory cost and performance. There is a remaining minor issue. Even though I tell them to just use security capabilities of CATO SASE, they still say something like they are satisfied with what they have right now and they still use the next gen firewall. I will now access to Salesforce to show you if the setting is working well. As you can see right there, Salesforce comes out in German. As I explained at the beginning of the video, I told you that the user's location is Montana in the United States, and CATO POP that is connected is in Portland POP. According to the network rules, when accessing Salesforce, it does not go directly to the internet, but through the global backbone to Frankfurt POP in Germany. And because it is connected to Salesforce with this POP designated as an egress point, Salesforce recognizes the GeoIP is located in Germany, and so we got the German in the screen. Now I have not changed German to English to show you how well it works, but you can change the language setting in your own language at the top right of the Salesforce screen. I will now go through the rest of the network rules. Transport entry is set to automatic for the automatic line backup, and the acceleration of optimization entry is applied with active TCP acceleration for TCP acceleration. To recap the value of this network rule, for our users regarding Salesforce, instead of sending things outright to the internet from CATO POP that is currently connected, we can send things to CATO Frankfurt POP using TCP acceleration capability and via global backbone that is paired with Frankfurt Data Center where our Salesforce instance is located, and then connect to it as an egress point. This effectiveness of this network rule is not intended for users in Germany or in some European regions since they already have fast network service. It is a rule for global companies to have predictable, reliable performance for Salesforce regardless of where their employees are located. In particular, it is a rule to relieve the pain of employees in areas where internet performance is significantly low and to improve their productivity. Despite the good things I have mentioned, IT staff at companies who have already been deploying a variety of cloud optimization solutions might say something like, "It is not as easy as CATO, but we really do not want to change it because we have already built a strong infrastructure for cloud optimization over the years." For this response, I would like to give one more strong advantage that I did not mention earlier. In this demonstration, the users who access to Salesforce were any, but in reality, there's only a few users who really need to use Salesforce. Not only the licensing cost per Salesforce user account is high, but also not every single employee must have access to the CRM information of the country. Rather, it requires strong user restrictions because it is important, sensitive information. To do this, how are you setting up a path for this connection for each user to use the cloud optimization solution you have introduced? Are you applying policy-based routing through a complex access list to your router? Or are you opening up all possibilities of meaninglessly filling out the expensive network services with all users and malicious traffics just because it is too complicated and cumbersome? Even if you do not mention that the network is already open to all traffic from the perspective of ZTNA, Zero Trust, which is quite dangerous, you're often using a lot of operational personnel to manage routing or controlling it with complex security capabilities like CASB. If you look at right here, CATO can simply specify who can use the special path. You can specify specific sites through a list of sites, view and select Active Directory user groups, and easily, accurately specify things like IP address ranges in various ways. And those sources that are not specified here cannot use the network path towards Salesforce completely. Additionally, you can assign unique egress net IP addresses for certain companies at CATO Frankfurt Pub. If sales allows access only to that specific IP address, Salesforce can easily, completely increase access security to the network level. This means that the department that manages Salesforce will also get comfortable with security operations. The advantages of flexibility in network rules based on CATO's software-defined network technology really vary. I will talk about just one more thing and move on because the video is getting too long. If you look at the network rule number 1, only for a user named Duke Kaboom, there is a rule that says change the address to net IP 45.62.190.80 to go to the internet when accessing an application on the internet. We specified Duke as the only user here, but you can surely add more users, you can specify groups, and you can specify certain users by expanding out. You might consider this to be an extremely specific rule, but here are many cases today where such network rules are needed for a variety of business corporations. Well, the larger the company, the greater the need for business diversity and network flexibility. For example, let's say Duke is in charge of marketing and he is doing a task of uploading content about promotional videos that requires security as he is accessing other PR companies' systems. Because the systems of these PR companies have to handle important new product promotional videos of their customers, they often enhance their security for network level access that is more than using ID or password security for accessing their systems. They only allow specific IP addresses to access to the firewalls, and they limit who comes in. Therefore, Duke should have his own internet authorized IP address in addition to the ID and password that is given to him to be identified by others. If you look at CATO's rule here, you can see how easily such requirements can be implemented. The network rule is about Duke should convert to net IP 45.62.190 and 80 for applications accessed through the internet. Well, what about applying this rule in your IT infrastructure? To make this happen, the network department should analyze the needs and register Duke's MAC address under the HCP equipment to assign a static IP address inside that does not change to the device used by Duke, and that MAC address should always be specified to have a specific static IP address. The security department should analyze the request, verify the internal static IP address from the network department, verify that there is enough space in the authorized IP pool to convert that IP address to a specific net authorized IP address within a firewall, extract authorized IP from the appropriate range, and configure NAT. And of course, there should be enough space for authorized IP address pool. And then they will go to Duke and try to clarify him the followings. Now you can do your work. However, you must always remember this IP address because you must use the assigned static IP address and you must never move to another place in the company or go on a business trip because your IP address must remain unchanged. That means you must work only on this desk, nowhere else. After all, Duke is now unable to move to a conference room with a different network subnet, or move to another branch office in order to maintain a given static IP address. Indeed, it is impossible to even think about working from home. This is because the corporate legacy network is unable to identify Duke. You can only identify the MAC address of Duke's laptop and his assigned static IP address. And if Duke is in a situation where he has to change his laptop, all of these steps must be done again from the scratch. CATO can solve these complex issues just like the network rules right here. And there is no need for imposing restrictions to Duke when you're with CATO. When Duke turns on his laptop to get to work and logs into Windows, he is assigned an automatic IP address. That is all he needs to start working. At this point, CATO maps Duke and his device to begin identification as soon as Duke logs into the CATO SASE service. Even if Duke did not log into CATO SASE service in the office, CATO's user awareness capability allows CATO to query Duke's window login information from the company's Active Directory. This allows you to see the log of which IP Duke is using to continuously authenticate to Active Directory, and then Duke and his IP address is mapped and managed. CATO uses this mapped information to accurately and continuously identify Duke and his device, and it applies the network rules. Duke is now free to work anywhere, and in order to provide IT services to users with this particular purpose, administrators can set network rules to improve user experience and productivity without arguing with Duke. These demands are significantly increasing as there is an increase of cloud transformation and works done through cloud applications, which also increases the demand for enhancement of security. Cloud transformation has been expanding, and now there are more cases of having additional security such as limiting accessible IP addresses rather than just assigning login ID to take care of the cloud access security. So it is basically a business requirement now. I'm not explaining these CATO's simple network rules just to brag about them. I'm basically talking about how CATO is valuable as a solution that can easily address the complex network operational burden in modern IT environments. I think those people who are actually experiencing these difficulties in this field of IT can relate. Now, let's move on to the security section. As you can see here, we have the Internet Firewall and the WAN Firewall. Think of these two firewalls as the perfect next-gen firewalls that extend to the secure web gateway capability you know. First of all, the Internet Firewall is a next-gen firewall that applies to the Internet segment to handle security related to the Internet. Just like the rule number 7 here, you can decide which country to block the Internet. It is blocking all the Internet traffic that goes from and goes to Russia, Iran, and North Korea. And if you look at the rule number 8, I have applied URL filtering capability to classify and block categories of malicious sites. Of course, it does not block right away. It gives a warning screen on the user's device, allows access, and makes some exceptions to it. You can also apply tracking capability to send events or emails for every access. Rule number 5 is to register the applications that a company uses as assets, and then it manages its access as well. Rather than checking applications every time you create or change security rules, you can go to Asset and create categories for them. Or you can use application awareness to set policies with databases that CATO already has. If you click the edit icon right here, you will find a number of applications and categories that CATO registered or customized before, and it is built to be convenient because you can choose from here. Let's check if the security rules applied here are working well. A message for blocking is displayed and the user can see the reason why it is blocked. If you have listened to what I said up to now, you might think that it is not much different from the SWG solutions you've been using before. From now on, I would like to explain the fundamental differences between the legacy cloud SWG solutions you're using and CATO's SWG. Most clouds SWG, such as Zscaler ZIA and McAfee SkyHigh, which are well known in Korea, have a forward proxy architecture. In other words, it is single directional next-gen firewall that can only be applied to traffic going from inside to the internet. Therefore, the traffic that departs from the internet is not secured due to a fundamental structural problem in this forward proxy architecture. You must have additional firewalls, such as Palo Alto or Fortinet, for security against incoming traffic. This is how it is deployed on your site using Cloud SWG. Cloud SWG with the forward proxy architecture is an ironic architecture because the solution for securing outgoing traffic and securing incoming traffic operates separately. It is also true that this uncomfortable truth of Cloud SWG or SSE was hidden and tolerated to some extent until the concept of SASE came out. Since SASE came out in 2019, such limitation of forward proxy architecture no longer remained a bearable inconvenience, and Cloud SWG was expected to be a simple solution that is used with the concept of shared economy, simply installing proxy equipment on the internet. Then it was recognized as a legacy solution in the market. It is easy to understand the limitations of cloud SWG vendors that I'm talking about. If you draw the flow of traffic from inside to the internet and if you draw the path of traffic from outside to inside, you can see that it is completely different from the right SASE that is capable of controlling the network. As you know well, firewalls are a front line of border of security that protects the inside from the internet. The firewall capability offered by Cloud SWG or SSE is a firewall capability that cannot be used in reality, as it is more important for the internet firewall to block things that come inside from outside than things going outside from the inside. CATO's internet firewall can provide a complete next-gen firewall capability that secures every single traffic incoming and going out to the internet, just like Palo Alto's next-gen firewall. Moving on to the WAN Firewall, we can see that there are even more benefits for using CATO's next-gen firewall. This WAN Firewall is a complete firewall as a service that can also be applied to remote users connected to the internal networks and communications between corporate sites. Most cloud-native security services only provide security for traffic in the north-south direction. They have architectural limitations that prevent the east-west directed traffic from the user section or the hybrid data center, which is company's WAN segment. However, CATO, referred to as Right SASE, is able to provide next-gen firewall capability for traffic in all directions of the company through its own global backbone. The security rules for CATO's WAN Firewall start with all blocks, and it is designed to add rules whenever permission to access is required. You might have already noticed that CATO begins with the concept of zero trust, and it is a zero trust architecture which is a completion of ZTNA. Recently, many SASE vendors treat ZTNA as an essential capability, and they provide it in their own way. Given that ZTNA vendors are implementing ZTNA in their own ways, you also need to have an insight of choosing the right ZTNA just for yourself. Now, back to CATO WAN Firewall, I would like to explain why CATO is a good zero-trust architecture based on ZTNA. As you know well, connecting headquarters, branches, and data centers in a legacy network are called WAN. Also, VPN is regarded as an extended WAN as well. In CATO's zero-trust architecture, you're connected to CATO Cloud, and every single segment that is communicated through CATO Global Network Infrastructure can be CATO's WAN segment. This means that every physical data center, branch, cloud data center, remote user, etc. is connected to CATO Cloud and performs WAN communication. Segments for pure web surfing, such as Naver or Google, are called the internet segment, and CATO's internet firewall protects them. WAN Firewall is a key capability that implements powerful ZTNA across the edges of all companies connected via CATO Cloud. And I'm sure some of you might have already realized what the requirement is to be the right ZTNA that I'm going to tell you soon. Yes, that is right. Zero trust starts with the absolute principle of not trusting every user. However, if you say something like you can apply ZTNA to some users and to some applications, that's just an access security solution, not a ZTNA. A company's zero trust architecture means that ZTNA capability must be operated throughout the entire IT infrastructure of a company. From what I have looked so far, CATO SASE is the only one that provides customers with a zero trust architecture across every internet and WAN segment of their enterprise. More vendors will have this kind of capabilities in the future, but so far they're still the same. However, many ZTNA vendors are being considered in the market. I think this is because the current review of ZTNA is mostly done at department level, not at the entire company. However, CATO is being overwhelmingly chosen by those companies that are trying to implement a proper zero trust architecture, regardless of the interests of the departments at the C level. If you take a look at the case of CATO's zero trust architecture's success, CATO is quite successful in companies that want to split large groups of companies or migrate global networks as a whole. Of course, there are more than 3,000 customers using CATO today, but improving their IT infrastructure with CATO is more likely to have a zero trust architecture than those companies that started with a goal of attaining a zero trust architecture. I think the introduction was too long. Now let's take a look at the screen and get back to where we were at. If you look at rule number 1, all of the companies guessed Wi-Fi around the world are blocked. The single line of security rule completes the access policy for the category defined as guest Wi-Fi. Rule number 2 is a rule that only ICMP is allowed in the entire network to see if there is any other network anomalies. Rule number 3 is a rule that only allows protocols that require access to domain controllers deployed around the world, named all vendors. It can also define access control for domain controllers worldwide in a single line. Rule number 6 allows users of Hogwarts School to access the resources of Gringotts, and it is configured to only be accessed against TCP for IPERF and UDP 5201. Unlike traditional firewall rules that focus on complex, menu-needed IP addresses, you can see that there is an access control policy implemented for the WAN segment, which is the east-west segment of this company, just like the names that are easily identified like sites, users, and applications that are connected to CATO clouds. If you want to implement a zero trust architecture, all network and security capabilities must be converged and be covered in a single data lake. Thus, if you have a mutually unified names and identifiers like CATO, you can easily manage powerful security rules like this WAN Firewall right here. To recap, to determine if a company's zero trust architecture was successful, it is important to see how many rules of firewalls that must be precisely set up can be applied, and how easily, intuitively, can you recognize and manage those rules. I checked with a customer to see if firewalls in major domestic branches around the world were properly set and operated, and I was surprised that many of them have maintained basic rules for years since they have installed, and some of them even had only network settings and no rules. In a zero trust architecture that requires precise access control, it is not about what security capabilities it has, but it is a key capability of a zero trust that provides an easy and seamless way to manage it. Let's look at other security capabilities for a zero trust architecture. First of all, we have the IPS capability. Here, you can see the differentiated advantages of CATO's zero trust architecture. IPS capability can be applied not only to the internet, but also to traffic in all segments, including the WAN segments. It is a fundamentally differentiated service design that applies to all traffic in all directions, which is quite different from typical companies having ISP equipment in its internal and internet corridors or in front of critical resources. Today, as the cloud transformation and remote work expanded, the attack surface expanded as well, and ransomware and DDoS attacks are actually more common in the WAN segment as well as in the internet gateway. However, companies are not realistically deploying IPS equipment throughout the entire WAN segments. There may be a burden of investment costs, but it is actually more difficult to deliver and operate this equipment. Simply enabling this capability allows CATO to enforce IPS security for all traffic flowing through the company. Of course, there are some items that customer can set themselves, but this is very simple. To prevent phishing sites that appear instantaneously, CATO has an option of adding blocking to newly registered domains, or temporarily blocking suspicious IP addresses for several minutes. You can also block traffic from a specific country as follows. And you can put things that you often manage as a whitelist in the allow list. As you can see right here, in scope you can apply to all traffic, inbound or outbound traffic, or you can select specific traffic in the WAN segment. It can also be configured by source or destination, or it can be subdivided into protocols. These policies automatically generate a signature ID internally, and it is possible to do the history management and tracking with this ID. You can see that you're able to set up IPS rules for your company's global traffic in an easy and intuitive way. Next, we have anti-malware capability. Here we have legacy anti-malware and next-gen anti-malware. You can regard anti-malware as an antivirus that you're familiar with. Next-gen anti-malware is a security capability for a new type of malware that is identified using the key indicator. It is a capability to block new unknown malware, commonly known as a zero-day attack or ATP. I'm gonna just say that it uses the type of technology that Sentinel-1 uses because the video is getting way too long. Simply enabling this capability starts it just like the IPS that I mentioned earlier. Problems like false detection are updated in real time by CATO's lab, so you don't have to analyze false detection with a separate control center. You can just talk to CATO. Accordingly, security people should know that everything about the capability is done by CATO, and they can just set the policies they need. If you look at the sample policy right here, this company is using Azure as a cloud data center. So now the security person will be wanting to define the traffic going to Azure to be trusted entirely. To set this up, the security person assigned all for the scope of the surveillance because there is a route to the internet and to the WAN. And the objective is traffic to Azure Blob Storage, Azure Service Bus, which is a message broker, and Azure Computing Services. All traffic to Azure is allowed by setting verdict to all file, meaning that this entire traffic can be trusted and the action based on evaluation is set to allow. With this single line, you're allowed to go to any of the designated destinations of the traffic, regardless of how many Azure data centers which are used by users all over the world. Well, of course, if you set it as allow, you're not giving up tracking traffic, so it is configured to perform event logging as well. CATO may have a pre-established database here, or the person has completed settings for all the Azure Cloud data centers with a single line of policy through a naming registered by this person as an asset. As a result, the rule enforces policies as shown in the following picture, and it allows all traffic against all files to Azure. You can see an interesting and powerful CATO advantage in this picture. Simply declaring it as WAN allows rules to be applied to the entire WAN segments around the world, and simply declaring it as the internet allows rules to be applied, regardless of how many internet gateways of companies there are. This is obviously a value of SASE you can get when the network service and the security services are perfectly converged. Next, we have TLS inspection capability. CATO's TLS inspection is also applicable across all segments, including the WAN segment, unlike most SASes only provide this service for internet traffic. Just enable this capability and then it will be implemented right away. And if you look at the rules below, you can easily set what to classify as exceptions. It is important that exception handling capability is easily provided because there is a data related to personal privacy that should not be encrypted nor decrypted legally. For example, traffic that contains personal healthcare related information is classified as personal privacy. And certain applications like Office 365 don't recommend you to do the encryption or decryption. Some applications also require exchanging certificates directly with the device, not a fake certificate, for encryption or decryption to function properly. It is possible to operate properly if and only if these things are intuitive and easily bypassed. If you are in charge of IT security, you know how easy and intuitive it is to set up like this, compared to that of other vendor solutions. Next, we have application control. The app control enabled here is activating CASB capability, and data control enabled is activating DLP capability down below. Data control is configuring detailed rules about how to apply what is set to the DLP configuration. If you look at the first sample rule, the type is data control. This applies to all users and all applications. When there is a credit card data inside the contents being uploaded or downloaded, this is a rule to set up to block it. The third sample rule is app control. It applies to all users and application is box. The policy is to allow you to download or log in from the box only. Therefore, unloading is automatically blocked. CATO can perform considerably granular control over cloud applications. You can control the application based on specific criteria or activities for each application. This capability is constantly being expanded and upgraded. As you listen to my explanation, some of you might think that CATO also provides capabilities like CASB and DLP that we use. However, CATO's CASB and DLP capabilities have advantages that are completely different from those vendors you're using today. Most CASBs are controlled through APIs that are limited by cloud application vendors. It is entirely up to the SaaS vendor to where the API is to be delivered, and the capability of CASB vendor is limited. In other words, the APIs provided by the SaaS vendors have limited access to ensure their service stability, and they do not care about what CASB in regard to the provision, modification, and the deletion of the API. It is the CASB market that shows these limitations. The API-driven CASB vendors that were going all alone in 2016 are all gone from the market now. They have emerged into other solution vendors. In fact, the CASB you're using is a service that inherits such limitations. Today, companies that implemented CASB typically use it for security enhancement for certain applications, such as MS365 and Salesforce, but no company implemented CASB for all cloud applications. This is because it is impossible to be done due to the limitations of CASB using API. On the other hand, CATO's CASB can analyze the traffic it controls. This presents the development of strong and freely manipulatable control capability that is so much more advanced than typical API linkage. CATO can analyze and control the application traffic. That being said, it is CASB that can be enhanced by itself with its various and powerful security capabilities. It is the same for DLP. It is not in a passive way through PCAP. It is a control capability of analyzing and controlling traffic in an active way. In conclusion, you might say these capabilities are the same, but CATO's CASB and DLP can analyze and process companies' traffic simultaneously, so it is not dependent on SaaS vendors and can be provided with development that is done independently. Therefore, it has so much stronger control capability and update capability than others. Since the differentiated capabilities of user awareness and application awareness discussed earlier are fully converged with the single pass engine, rule settings related to CASB and DLP are so much more simple than those of any other vendor's solutions. Let's see if it is working well. This is the second sample rule. The type of this rule is DLP. It is applied to every user in Hogwarts school side, including me and someone else. The policy here is a rule that blocks files containing credit card information and social security numbers among uploaded data for all applications. Let me give you an example with Slack that I'm using right now. I will upload my file, which I made it before the session, that contains the social security number and credit card information. As you can see, if you upload your file, you can see that the file is blocked from being uploaded based on the rules in CATO's data control. Here you can see the differences with other solutions. Let me show you this again slowly this time. Did you see that? You can see that the Slack is attempting to perform uploading, but it continuously fails. This can be seen in real time because CATO analyzes and actively controls the traffic. In addition to those differentiated advantages from DLP vendors using PCAP, CATO has an advantage of being completely different from DLP provided by other cloud SWG services, since CATO can analyze and control the traffic for all segments, including the WAN segments. In fact, everyone knows that there is more important information in an internal applications than applications on the internet. You have not thought about enhancing security because there has been no solution that can control this at network level. This is an inherent distinction so much more important than those fancy looking capabilities. And all of these logs for blocking are recorded as events, and you can easily see those. If you go back to the monitoring tab and go to the DLP dashboard, you can see which DLP rule prompt to block this and how much violations have been made. You can easily see what are the users doing in this screen. You can also easily see each detail by applying filtering on items in the event section. All of this event information will be stored for 6 months, and you can view every single event right here. You can see that Harry Potter accessed LinkedIn and was blocked as he tried to upload a file that contains credit card information or a social security number through LinkedIn, and you can check all the other details right here. These DLP configurations are super easy to work with. Even though you might not be a security expert, CATO is developed based on pre-organized data types so that you can easily define profiles. This means that CATO has done all the annoying and challenging things for you beforehand. But you might want to have a special data type, so we do provide an easy way of creating your own data type. As you can see here, you can easily create data types with keyword, dictionary, and regular expressions. Wrapping up on CASB and DLP, I would like to ask you a question. Do you see a difference between the CASB and DLP on this screen and the ones you've been using till now? Right, we have rule settings for CASB and DLP together, and they perform co-processing as well. This is a powerful advantage of a fully converged service with a single pass engine. There are two capabilities in the screen together to create synergy, which allows administrators to easily recognize those things in there and set the needed rules accurately. When CASB and DLP, which were employed for similar purposes, exist as separate solutions, there could be some conflicts due to duplicated settings, and this can be eliminated by CATO. Also, when there is an issue, there is a need for cross-validation of rule settings of each to find out what kind of issue it is. CATO can eliminate that as well. This gives you more values than just using and thinking about operating 2-point products or a single point product. Finally, I would like to talk about one of the greatest advantages of CATO, which is a visibility into the entire IT infrastructure. It would be nice if you take a look at the screen from a different perspective from a well-made single screen, 4-point products providing different capabilities. CATO SASE fully converged a variety of capabilities and is managed by a single data lake. So this is a visibility presenting screen for the entire IT infrastructure, shown by CATO SASE. Let's go to the monitoring tab. First of all, you can see how all sites and users are connected through this topology screen. What you see right here is the most simplified version, and you can view whichever information you want by clicking the filter and group in the upper right corner. This threats dashboard is a quick overview to all the security threats occurring in your global IT infrastructure. You can see what threats are occurring the most, when they occurred, and in which country or location they occurred. Moving on to Cloud Apps Dashboard, you can see how many applications are being used by users around the world and which applications are being used. Here you can see all the applications that you might have been oblivious to, including those shadow ITs, and you can check their risk scores as well. The information in this screen offers significant value in being managed in real time, with the benefits of dramatically reducing the amount of time consumed for collecting information to set up plans for using applications and plans for security. Here we have another special advantage of CATO. If other CASB solutions make the user to manually select applications, CATO analyzes all the traffic throughout the entire internet and WAN segments and finds out all the applications being used automatically. And in real time, it can reconfigure access policy through a variety of security capabilities. And you can even have an overview of applications appearing and disappearing over time. This is truly valuable because it can check every department and employee purchases, and it can make you capable of controlling them based on automatic application threat analysis and other things. Also, if you go to the app category to do this easily, you can check CATO's pre-researched information on every application around the world and their compliance and risk. In fact, taking a lot of time to search the internet to analyze a single application and checking whether what you've searched is true or not is quite a time-consuming and cumbersome task. This reduces the operational burden by making it easier to understand the applications used by employees and to determine how to set policies for such applications by looking at the categories of those applications with weakness in their security. As you've heard so far, CATO is not only a service with security and network fully converged, but also its management application, which is CATO Management Application, and it makes it easy for anyone to use it, and that is what completes the well-made SASE. From now on, let's talk about the way how to run CATO that has fully converged network service and network security. In many companies today, network teams and security teams are separated, and they think their jobs are important. They must coexist within the field of IT infrastructure, but they handle different solutions, and they are experts in their own fields. The fact that Gartner disconnected SSE from SASE is not irrelevant. IT experts in companies understand the value of SASE being innovative for having network and security fully converged as a single architecture, but they still prefer to have solutions that have their own specialties, and this reflects the current market status. Gartner emphasized that network security being converged with network has a tremendous advantage and can maximize its security capability. And the market, on the other hand, seems to feel that SASE has become a trend but has not yet crossed a barriers of IT organizations of companies. CATO is designed to collaborate with those companies' IT organizations while taking the advantages of convergence. CATO understands that no matter how intuitive and easily managed UI that its CMA provides for efficient operation, having network experts and security experts together to discuss and try to manage it on a single screen can be more cumbersome, which may even cause to have more troubles. Gartner separated SSE from SASE and is making a poor announcement based on the market forces and log, saying that SSE is also one of the innovative trends in the market. But if you look at the details, SSE that Gartner is talking about is nothing more than just a cloud SWG, which is absolutely not a new concept or anything like that. However, CATO is a SASE since birth. It was born as SASE. Just like what Gartner said, it is a service that cannot separate network and network security. As you can see through CMA, it is a truly converged service as a single pass engine with a single data lake. This is because CATO is completely new and perfect by itself, unlike other SASE vendors who claim flexibility as simply integrating or weakly combining and offering services separately if desired. Of course, being able to handle network and network security all at once while obtaining perfect visibility on global IT infrastructure means it can provide quick and flexible support for the company's business, and this contributes to the overall economic activity of the company. However, it is quite natural to address organizational issues associated with many IT people. To solve two problems, CATO listened to the needs of more than 3,000 corporate customers and ended up solving all of these through a capability called rule-based access control. As you can see here, rule-based access control consists of 5 administrator roles. Those are editor, viewer, network admin, and the access admin. Editor is a given supreme administrator role to manipulate the rights of other administrators. I recommend you to grant this role to a CIO who has the authority to coordinate the divisions of your tasks in your IT organization, or to someone who has given this privilege. Viewer is a role to view all the situations in the IT infrastructure provided by the tabs that CMA classified as monitoring. I recommend you to grant this role to all administrators. It is because network administrators and security administrators can find their tasks to complete, which allows them to perform quick and accurate rule management as keeping their eyes on what is going on around the world. Next, we have the network admin, a role given to those network administrators, and everything related to networking within the network tab in CMA is allowed by this role. Security admin is a role granted to those network security administrators. Every security-related rule under Security tab in CMA is allowed to be decided by this role. Access admin is a role given to the administrators on a remote access system that manages ZTNA-based remote access service. All administrative roles are in the Access tab in CMA. You can grant multiple roles to each administrator. For example, if your network team manages remote access system together, you can give that administrator a view role with network admin and access admin all together. As a result, people in charge of each department can gain visibility on the entire IT infrastructure through CMA and easily find out what to do, understand and cooperate with more information without having a whole bunch of meetings and stuff. Here is a quick look at the settings for the administrator roles of the real-world global company in Korea that is currently operating. You can see that each administrator is granted appropriate role in accordance with their tasks. I can confirm that CATO provides a tool, maintaining advantages as SASE, that the network department and security department are able to cooperate seamlessly through CMA, as they can check each other's work because CATO can assign roles based on the tasks of those departments. Moreover, such a value of collaboration gets bigger because you can share and work together in real time. And everything that administrators do can be checked through the event log and the audit trail. You can easily see what is going on in your department and other departments, which leads to the elimination of confusion. Rather than checking if something is wrong through the audit trail, I usually say that it is possible to strengthen mutual cooperation works to my customers. I have an experience when I recognized the beauty of audit trail. I was able to avoid the situation where human errors could have occurred as I was able to perform a cross-validation for the settings I've done with a person who was remote during the collaboration. Furthermore, CATO SASE subscription service allows you to be contracted with the entire SASE, or to have network services only, and you can add additional security and remote services if you want to. To be more specific, if you subscribe to a network service or services, you can still use the next-gen firewall capability, and of course you can choose security capability from those given options. CATO is developed as a single pass engine with a single data lake, having every capability to be performed in the background. But your CMA screen allows you to only control the services you have subscribed. CATO's ultimate goal is to be a big data company, not a SASE vendor. Accordingly, metadata from over 3,000 customers is being developed and upgraded so that it can be made into meaningful information through big data technology and be provided back to our customers. So that's all you have to say. To sum up, I talked about CATO's CMA and what kind of advantages this perfectly converged CATO SASE provides in comparison to those of other SASEs. And I also talked about how IT departments can operate effectively with each other on a fully converged CATO SASE and the values we can get from it. Lastly, as the cloud transformations in Korean companies has been completed to some extent, more companies are moving to combine network departments and network security departments to solve some shortcomings of the cloud transformations. Well, that is reasonable because the WAN segment is rapidly increasing due to the cloud transformation, and the internet is acting as a WAN segment for companies, resulting in exacerbating user experiences, which is why the network is getting so much more important. As it works even better for the integrated enterprises like this, CATO SASE will bring true hybrid IT infrastructure innovation right to you. Also, based on my experience with CATO for 2 years, I know that this company takes customer situations and requirements seriously, which means such innovation will continue to be carried out by CATO. Thank you very much.